that is an established democracy because it is wrong and you're going to get jailed. You see, the functionality of institutions has a certain space that ordinarily takes time to be able to form and crystallize. It's a journey. Yeah. Now, that space, the legislative space and implementation of the legislation in terms of enforcement will take time too for certain laws to be enforced. We have laws against all that, cyberspace basically, because I believe that's the cyber law element. Now, a text that's offensive and other areas have been tested in this country. We've declared certain provisional and constitutional. We started afresh and on and on. If you go to the space, whether it's X space or whatever space it is in the internet, some people brazenly, abuse, insult. They will take the anatomy of a woman and insult the woman, whether it's a politician or a teacher or somebody that they've crossed their path. And you see, it passes. Very few times, in terms of, if you look at the sum total of the insults and abuses that go on there, very few will take steps because, first, of course, it drags a lot of time.
But it seems that in Kenya here, that is very normal. The word intimidation,
like I'm saying.
In fact, they say, "Bwana, auto intimidate bwana."
Yes, it's very normal. It's very normal because the enforcement mechanism. You see, let me tell you what Kenyans believe in from my own experience. Deterrence is on account of physical evidence of the result. Deterrence is not making a law. So you can't say there's a law against robbery, against death, killings, illegal killing, and so on and so forth, and people don't kill. They are going to kill. But when there is enforcement against that, and they see the deterrence element, that is, punishment has been meted out persistently and consistently, then eventually there's a fallback on the element of crime. Yes. So crime has a lot to do with circumstances as to enforcement and the results that is evidential to the people, such that eventually there is the national psyche of deterrence. It therefore follows that until it is enforced, it is available to be exploited.
It's interesting. I mean, in Kenya, Dr. Evelyn Ogendo joined us already. Dr. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Abdul Badida serving 7 years in jail because of intimidation. That sounds so unique and peculiar to you, being a Kenyan.
Well, not
how many times have you been intimidated or stalked?
I think that's my middle name.
Somebody should be in jail by there, right now. If
not
that's
somebody,
the case.
some people.
Yeah.
But you see, but I've seen in the recent past, there's a bit of change of events, as Wakili has rightfully said, in that when who is being intimidated, you feel like somebody has written something that you feel intimidates you or just goes against your values. You can sue that person. I've seen people being prosecuted, actually. I've seen people paying for it, but I don't know whether they eventually get to be jailed or to pay up the fine. That one I'm not very sure, but I've seen so many conclusions of them whereby you see somebody tells you things on social media, especially on WhatsApp, tells you a few things on Instagram, tells you things. It's suable. You can sue someone, but how long and then you ask yourself.
For Kenya, we're just okay with just being okay.
That's why, in fact, that's intimidation has made so many people, especially women, not to get into leadership positions, because somebody wants to tell you who you are, and if you are not emotionally very aware of what this person is trying to do to you, you can buy into different opinions, and it is going to frustrate you, and it will make you not go for what you want. But when you understand what the one intimidating you is trying to do to you, and you distance yourself from the emotions of that person, so what that means, that person does not achieve.
Okay. Allow me to ask you this. So perhaps Wakili, guide us shortly. So where do you draw the line? She's talked about, leaders being intimidated to not getting their position. So where do you draw the line to what is criminally palpable of being... there's a very thin line, so to speak. So at what point can somebody sue you of intimidation? And the other side, somebody can say it was just a political intimidation.
You know, a crime is a crime because we say it is. Otherwise, if it is not said, it's not a crime. For instance, if something happens, but it's not in a criminal content in a legislation, it's not a crime. That's one. Number two, a crime is a crime when somebody complains that there's a criminal activity against the person. There are some, of course, criminal activities as against the public,
yes, like
white-collar crimes of corruption and all that. But you see, if you're affected as an individual, those crimes against the individual, and you don't complain, then there is nothing to prosecute there. So it becomes a crime because you've complained.
Then I think that's why we are taking it so casual.
Yes, until people complain, because they take it casually. The public itself is complacent on the same. Let me give an example, a live example. A press conference was held in Kilifi, for instance, the other day, where a woman, a leader woman was called a baboon, all right? And I'm shocked. There's nothing she's doing about it except complaining about it, why she's being called a gorilla.
I think that's because of the nature of how we take things.
It's exactly. Now, whoever said it didn't definitely know the law on intimidation, all right? But the bullying in it, I can feel what she feels. I mean, these are persons with children, with families, and you're called a gorilla in front of a press conference? It's really wrong. But you see, why it won't be done is because there is a socio-political agreement that you say this, tomorrow I'm going to say this against you.
Yes.
And the political competition is on insults.
Okay.
All right? But elsewhere, that's prosecutable. And also, it can lead to someone serving a jail sentence.
I don't want to prosecute my director because he's intimidating me to take a break. We'll be right back with more. Right, welcome back. So let's get back to the discussion. I'll give you, Evelyn, sorry, Daktari, 1 minute, at least just to get through this. This is a story that we talked about here, 5 days of anguish, that is in relation to Ndarasha School, the fire tragedy. Now the parents will have to wait for 1 month to get the results of the DNA. Let's also talk about the issue of the sharp divisions marking Ruto's 2-year term. That is what so far we have, 2-year rule. That is what's on the front page. So let me start with the 5 days of anguish. Perhaps, again, you've not come to the show since this happened. Your message of condolence, of course.
No, yeah. I've not. Well, you know, Kenya, we have a very big problem.
Yeah.
That for you to take care of something, you remember like the floods. The floods caused a lot of havoc in this country. We have this thing of, for something to happen, a certain tragedy has to give it something like a backup. Yeah. Like, why am I doing this? Like, why should I keep my house clean? Well, you know, you have to have a reason. You even wonder, do we ever have policies in place before, you know, an institution is... Because when I looked at that school, you know, private schools, I would say it's somebody's business. Even if it is somebody's business, we have a government under which they should be given guidelines of operation. But you see, that school, I don't think it's a very new school. It has operated, it has a number of learners, it has a number of pupils. And then, when a tragedy is happening, is when the ministry is sending people to see whether they have, the other institutions have complied. I feel that is a very bad culture. You see, that something has to happen for you to start seeing, by the way, do we have policies, do we have guidelines guiding us on this? You know, when something has already happened. So I don't know how this culture, I don't know how it is. You remember when like the gas explosions, you remember like the gas explosions? And then they decided now the mitungis have to be sold from outside. I think, you know, something has to happen. Lives have to be lost for something to be done. I think, now like, now we can sit here and wait. Let's say, for example, now the agriculture and hunger and something like that. We wait until a certain point when people are dying of hunger is when you think about what do we do? How do we come up with this crisis? It's a very big backfall for our government, our government to perennially watch his or her people dying for something to be implemented, for something to be put in place the way it's supposed to be put in place. Think about those families. You know, what they have is a permanent scar. You know, we are just reading it and watching it over the news. But there's this there's this only child somebody had. Maybe I'd had a very big issue in terms of getting children. Not all people have got the fruit of the womb. You see, now, when you say, and then the measures are being taken, oh, we need to implement so that more are not dying. So what are we going to do? That we are going to help you, okay, we are going to make the burial arrangements. Somebody's child is going to come back blind. Somebody's child is going to come back disfigured. You know, there's so much mental issues involved. The families, I've lost my child. That is something that is going to linger with me and until God knows what time. So we don't ever consider that part of story. We usually consider the part of story, how do we stop? Right. While how do we stop this is something important.
I'll give you a minute probably later on because of what's your background? Psychologist by profession. Perhaps what's now going through the minds of the parents, even the school administration itself right now. But most importantly, the pupils. I mean, you can imagine now what's going through the minds of those pupils, the torture and all that. You had your friend 1 minute when you're going to bed after classes, and the next minute probably. Yeah. I'll give a minute later on so that we can talk about that as we come back. All right, so there's a lot happening in the political arena for us to consume. So let's do this very quickly. There is an issue in the mountain, and we talked about it some times back, but it seems things are now trying to unfold, and there's some sense of crack in the mountain. And now, Mount Kenya East breakaway strikes heavy blow as DP. Some of the Mount Kenya leaders from the eastern side have also said that their only spokesperson right now is CS Kithure Kindiki. Now, this one seemingly is giving some sense of a blow to the deputy president. We have got two camps now, so to speak, from the eastern side and the other side of the mountain, who are saying that their only person to go to speak for them is Kithure Kindiki. So what does this really mean to the DP? Wakili?
Oh, well, it's interesting times for the DP, and I think he learned the politics, as it were, in the space of a deputy president of this country. A deputy president is a principal assistant to the president, but you don't become a principal assistant to the president if at the time of the campaigns you have nothing to bring to the table. So either you bring money or you bring numbers, or both. Now, when that happens, remember, you ought to do it with a competitive advantage over those that you bring to the table, meaning the people. If you bring money without the people, money is going to get used and expended over the campaign period. But then eventually you will realize that you need the people. So you have to go back to the fold of that will be your support, meaning the clientele base or where you came from. Now, remember, and we've said this before, that this country is ethnicized in its operation and in the way it's organized. We even legislated on ethnicity, even in the Constitution. It has ethnic balancing, and which is not a bad thing. Now, how is politics in terms of the democratic space that we celebrate in this country? It is that after every 5 years, 5-year cycle, you have to come back to the fold as a country and elect someone. That process involves creating content of bias for someone. For the more the bias for a person, then the person becomes the elected person, because the bias converts itself and transmits itself as a vote, whose sum total becomes the number of votes which you get, and you become a leader, including the president. Now, when you do that, that bias is shifty. It's shifty when you start administration, because of the interests that compete every time. And we always compete. Now, the ethnicity element here is that we were not a country. We were just some geographical area with convenience to live, and you could shift from one place to another, meet a hostile tribe, and you fight it off, get the land, or you are pushed away, and so on and so forth. That's how we were. Some were in agriculture, some were pastoralists, as it is still today. But dominantly, we were not a country. Some white men somewhere sat down and parceled the land and said, this is Kenya, bordered by Tanzania and Somalia, and so on and so forth. So then we became a geographical space. Then we transformed ourselves into a system of governance through the independent constitution. But at that time, the consideration was Majimbo or no Majimbo, because the ethnic tribes at that time were supposed to be formed into one community that formed a system. Now, because of the ethnicity element as a basis to form the country, it has been sustained to date, because then the generational element remains constant, that we come from a certain tribe with a certain interest. That's why then we have some fiefdoms of tribal, people here and there with their interests. Now, why we're talking about Mlima is one, the mountain, is because of their numbers. And number two, probably of the economic dominance that prevails over many other ethnic groups. And number three is how they formed governments over time. Because they formed Jomo Kenyatta, they formed government with Kibaki, and they formed with Uhuru Kenyatta. And now they're out of government, but they're second in the tier of leadership and power in this country. Now, why then is there an issue in Mlima? It's because of the numbers that they contribute to the country and to the presidency, and the fact that they had certain expectations, which can only be met through certain negotiations.
Okay. Listen to this. When the leaders, around 13 of them met yesterday, the movement and now the process dubbed Reclaiming Mount Kenya East Title Deed. That is what is now dubbed Reclaiming Mount Kenya East Title Deed. It's by a declaration by 13 members of parliament from the eastern side. So you'd imagine what is now happening on the western side of Kenya, or of the mountain. I don't know what kind of political magic that will happen to bring the two sides of the mountain together. It seems that the split is already widening second by second, not even day by day. Dr.
Well, I would like to just give an overview of what could be happening in the mountain. Who's going to be the spokesperson, who's not going to be the spokesperson, who is stronger, who is closer, who has more following. Because I think in politics it's about numbers. It's not about how creative you are in your policies or something. It's the numbers you have. You first bring the numbers and then you bring your voice. The numbers you have is what gives you the voice. All in all, according to me, Mount Kenya as a whole, apparently they have issues that they will need each other to solve. And then if they are going to have factions like those ones, what that means, I think it's their effort to try. According to me, when I view it, it's like they feel like they are getting out of the mainstream of politics by day, beginning from the deputy president, from the way he has given special attention to the mountain until the mountain people are forced to also look at themselves. And then that is causing like their divisions. Because they can feel they have a loss somewhere, but they cannot define what loss they are undergoing. Because they speak utterances in such a way like there's a bit of exclusion when it comes to the mainstream politics of the country. Now, those two factions, and I think with the time, from my view, they are going to divide even more, if at all they do not come together and speak. And then ask themselves, where do you feel as, okay, it's good as a region to be together, but why are they finding it necessary this time? What are they trying to address? Because do they really know what they are addressing? Because they're afraid of something that they don't want to bring out and talk about it openly. Because if they do, the ones who have a bit of differences, they'll find a reason why they should speak one language. But they are not addressing the problem. They are going around the problem. Even the other Kenyans do not know what's happening in the mountain. Because all we know is that they have a bit of divisions. Some of the leaders do not speak the same language with the deputy president. The other day you heard how he was complaining about Honorable Ichung'wah, how he was complaining about his utterances. But what I would say, they have a bigger problem than what they are addressing. So maybe it's unless they get to know what their real problem is in the mountain, that is the time they are going to find solutions. They are afraid of something, but they have not talked about it.
What is the end game?
The end game will mean...
According to you, what are they afraid of?
They are afraid of that their closeness to the president is withering with time. And
that is the entire mountain region?
Not the entire mountain region, but a good And you see, the deputy president has already given indicators of the sorts that he wouldn't like. Sometimes he behaves like he's displaced. Sometimes he behaves like, you know, you're working for a government. You're working for one government. One person is saying this, the other person is saying this. Are you seeing? Clearly, it's not about what he's saying. Clearly, it shows the nation that there's a problem in the mountain.
Yeah.
And the problem in the mountain, they are afraid of the distance, that is the gaps that are coming in between them and the mainstream politics of the country. And I think those are just efforts. Those groupings. The 13 members of parliament and others are going to group themselves. Others are going to feel we are more than this, so let us swallow them, you know.
And the end game?
The end game is they're going to lose if they don't going to speak one language as a region.
Already there's a split. Wakili.
No, you know, there's a split, but it's not a confirmed split. You know, there's a way we can work like we are not working together.
They came out,
but it doesn't mean that we cannot work together at some point.
It was a resolution from Embu, Meru and Tharaka-Nithi members of parliament that moving forward, so their spokesperson is Kithure Kindiki. What's the end game to this?
Now, what I think here is that the deputy president is accounting for his own folly and displaying himself as a biased leader, not only for the country, because he's a deputy president for the entire country, but he has this language of emphasis on where he comes from, which is good and also bad. It's good because you want to protect your political base, but also bad because of the fact that you are supposed to be a national leader, notwithstanding. So it can be the dominant that where you come from is more important than the country. You're supposed to put the country ahead. That is one. Number two, even in that conclave too, you realize that it is more of not the entire gamer. It is part of it.
Yes.
And therefore the others feel disgruntled and therefore unrepresented. Like I don't feel represented by the deputy president because I come from a different region and he speaks of a different people. But even in there, in the entire gamer community, he speaks of a community probably with a bigger number than the other small communities of the Embu and Bere and so on and so forth. Now, when he does that, he disenfranchises politically those groups, and therefore they have to find a political equilibrium of sorts, because the same is destabilized by probably resource mobilization, or so the thinking of the same to a certain area. And when they say we want to claim the title deed, basically they are trying to sever the area and geographically create a fiefdom of a political enclave of sorts, as would labor to also try and progress the economic or resource mobilization from government to their end, because it's about competition. And therefore, when you do that, you realize that the constant clamor for a certain people to be given and not others in itself can be, yes, it gives you probably the voice of those people because they have numbers and can propel you.
Let me remind you.
But more importantly is that you disenfranchise your own, as will be the support. For instance, if I feel disenfranchised, then he doesn't belong to my side because he doesn't talk for me. And that's what people try to feel. Probably a besieged environment would be to reach out on the face of it, because they see the layers of engagement. At the national level, you can engage at that layer, at that level, and be seen to be a national leader. But then when it comes to organization in your backyard, you do it in matters that do not seem to disenfranchise other people.
Okay, this is what happened. We all remember that evening. In Karen, when President William Ruto was still the DP then at his residence, there was a very long wait that went for over hours into the night, deliberating who was going to be the running mate and all that. And then reports came out that then Kithure Kindiki left in protest, drove himself out of the DP's then residence. And the following day, we saw what happened. Rigathi Gachagua was named as the running mate. Could we trail it back to that point, Dr. That there is something not yet resolved?
Yeah, there's something not yet resolved. Just even in the other seats, the other parliamentary seats. I think what happened that time and what is still happening, it is evident of that the incident you have just come up with, because I think Honorable Kindiki also, everybody wants the best for him or whatever. He feels like maybe this is his turn to get also to rise into the position. He feels maybe where His Excellency Gachagua is where he was supposed to be. So you see, this, we could be fighting things that are a bit historical. In politics, that's how it is. There are some historical injustices that somebody, it's unless you achieve what you exactly want. The time doesn't matter. So, but I would say what is happening right now to the mountain is mostly contributed, but by the attitude. Maybe sometimes the deputy president just does that simultaneously without knowing the impact of the perception it creates when he's ever talking of one region when he's supposed to be a deputy president for the entire country. Because I've never heard him talk of Nyanza, I've never heard him talk of Rift Valley, I've never heard him talk of any other region in the country other than the mountain. And now Kenya is just at a point whereby the mountain has a problem, I think. We have reached that point, and I think the one who has contributed a bigger percentage to this current issue and stalemate, it is the deputy president.
Can he salvage?
He may not, because he'll, salvaging means that some people have to give up what they're not willing to give up. Like, I don't think Nikki can be willing to give up once again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. Salvaging, I don't know. It can only, we can work together with our differences. Doesn't mean when we are working together, you have what you want and I have what I want.
By salvaging, I mean, what if he steps out of the mountain and he finds himself in Kilifi, he finds himself in Western Kenya?
That would be, I think it's already done. The perception is already at home. And if he does that, it's because of the protests of most of the Kenyans. Like, why are you concentrating in one region and you're supposed to be a national figure? So I don't think he can salvage himself. And then when he starts going to Kilifi, going to other regions, going to Nyanza, going to wherever place as a deputy president, I don't think it will create any impact, because what they'll know is, and I think it will be unfamiliar for him. I think our deputy president has just dealt with Mount Kenya, and would like, okay, charity begins at home, but he has overdone it, and I feel, as an individual, I feel that those regions are not very familiar.
Salvaging it right now would be more beneficial than waiting until 2027 and seek re-election. Somebody will say, we don't know you.
No, you can try that, but I don't think it's going to work.
Okay. Wakili, what do you think?
Well, I think what is important is you display a character based on your actions, your words, and how you package yourself. That's the character you sell out to people. So character is the behavior that remains dominant over time, such that it becomes a semblance of your representation.
That is you, who you are.
Yes, who you are.
Yes.
So as far where I sit today, and that's probably the same dominant thinking of the psyche of Kenyans, is that I have a deputy president who is from the mountain, first. So he has characteristics, I'm a deputy president from the mountain. Number two, that he is a diehard, probably it will be said to be, he's a radical person from the mountain, on account of how he dominantly, consistently, persistently, in his thinking, in his characterization, he brings issues of the mountain all the time. He has never talked of Turkana, he has not talked about bandits, he has not talked about school-going children in Garissa and the hunger here and there. He doesn't do that.
I don't know whether this was deliberate to make him focus on the
there's
mountain.
a strategy to it. Don't forget it.
Okay.
Raila has first had to be a tribal chieftain before he became a national leader. I mean, today you can't go to Kondele and do anything anti-Raila. You can't, because that's his fiefdom that is created and emotionalized it over time. And that becomes a political tool that you have to use. So if you have the numbers of your diehards in certain areas, some fiefdom, political fiefdoms which you can run to, that becomes a... Like I said, first you are an ethnic being before a national leader, and that becomes the conundrum that we're dealing with. So Raila Odinga had to become a chieftain of sorts, and then package himself to a national status such that now it's an African status, right? So there's a journey you need to travel. There's no journey that can be said to have been traveled by the deputy president. So he has first, I think, to sustain, because he is not a dominant. By the way, I don't think he delivered Mount Kenya to Ruto. I don't think so. I think Mount Kenya decided to work with President Ruto on account of the promises that were made then. He now needs to probably...
Why do you say, could it be because he was picked late into the time?
Yes, he did not deliver it on account of the fact that he came late. Now he has first to be an organic being with the mountain, such that then he can call shots there and deliver that on the table to whoever will be available. Remember, he may not even be the deputy president in the coming elections. That choice is available too. It's a risk that he has to deal with. So probably there is also the indication that he may not be the running mate in the next election on account of the fissures that are already there. If so,
not some good news for some people.
Yes. But if so, it means he needs to repackage himself from an.
Remember, he's also winning souls, Daktari. Let me just get from Daktari. He's also winning souls from the mountain.
I don't think so. I just don't think so. Well, okay, fine. I like the comparison you have used of Honorable Raila and him. You see, Raila on his staff, he did not have a competitor. You know, Mount Kenya, I think he faces a lot of competition from so many people from Mount Kenya. And you see Raila from Nyanza has continued to dominate. Like, who competes with him? Who competes with him? The deputy president has not one, not two, who can actually compete with him. You see, you remember, he was our first time member. He was a member of parliament, and then after he was a member of parliament, I think the elevation was so. I don't think even, and then from there you are the deputy president of a country. Now, where do you move to? You know, it's like now becoming a governor. You know, it brings a lot of confusion to so many of these governors when they finish, especially those ones who go for 2 terms. You have been a governor for 2 terms. Now, where do you go from here? Now, where do I go? Some of them start becoming, like Manago, they start becoming senators, which something we look like that's a step lower.
Okay. So what do you see from here?
What I'm seeing from here, the strategy for the deputy president, it's a bit... I don't think it's going to work for him. It's and the time frame. It does not have such a long time. You know, like right now, as we speak right now, in 1 year's time, there's going to be full-blown elections will start again in this country. Now, he does not have time to do those visits, like you have said. He does not have time to bring the people of the mountain together because they already formed perceptions and factions that are against him. That are not, it does not have, okay, with the time, if we had so many years, he should have worked on it.
It would be interesting to see how this thing is going to pan out, because now the mountain is split. The members of parliament are saying that their own spokesperson is Kithure Kindiki, and the deputy president says that he is the boss of the mountain.
Whoever the boss is, and you see, I think leadership, who is the boss, who is the what, you don't really fight for it. Okay, fine, you can fight for it, but you can also have a backup. Okay. But you can fight for it. Personally, I disapprove of what the deputy president does. I don't like the way he does his things, because if you are a national figure, because I do not feel inclusive in his leadership. Coming from Kisii, I do not, you know, like the time he was accompanied the president to Kisii, to Nyanza. Okay, we are part of Nyanza, but at one point he came to Kisii, and then at one point he went to Luo Nyanza. He accompanied the president. I think, according to me, looking at him, he was doing it because many people have complained he's ever in the mountain. So I can come here, actually. But do you have content for the Kisii people?
That's the question.
Do you have a connection?
You talked about,
do you have a connection with the Kisii people?
You talked about having a backup, and that word backup is fully loaded. I know what kind of a backup, maybe political
but
backup,
let me sum it up this way.
Kindly, in one,
yes, in one
out
sentence.
Of time already.
Politics, the art of politics is to conquer and dominate. Yes. Always. So you seek to conquer and dominate whatever you can, and then now expand the nucleus, so then you have as many as possible. So yes, he has no clientele base coming into deputy presidency. So I do think that he needs to conquer and dominate that which he thinks belongs to his fold, as an available political claim at the moment, and then now he can expand out. So maybe he needs to get the mountain sorted, then he can go to Kisii, he can go elsewhere. Whether it's late or not, I'm not sure, but he needs to do that.
We will be here, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be here in, God give us more time. We'll be discussing more of this. Thank you so much for, we should say that short and sweet, but we still have more time that we'll be discussing this political, whatever is happening in the country. Time is running very fast, and coming 2027, I don't think something will be. All right, Kenya is here for us. All right, let's take a break. Wakili, George Keith, thank you so much for joining us, and Daktari Evelyn Ogendo also joining us on the show. All right, let's take a break, but before then, how about to take a look at what's happening on our weather forecast for today?